finna get to this video though. The most brutal F1 injuries ever survived. Wait.
On July 25th, in 2009, Felipe Massa was having the season of his life at the Hungaroring circuit. The Brazilian...
Nah, I'm not gonna lie. I've seen car crashes from like these racer events, bro. Them shits look like how do people survive those? That's like, bro, niggas' whole cars be exploding and shit. How do niggas be survive this shit, bro? And I used to love cars when I was a kid, bro. I'm not gonna lie, but I never understood how niggas survive these things.
Ferrari driver was leading the Formula One World Championship and was currently fighting for what would be his first world title. On a calm Saturday evening, while qualifying for the Hungarian Grand Prix, Felipe was pushing his car to the absolute limit and trying to secure the pole position for the official race. His car was screaming down the straightaway at over 160 miles per hour, flying past onlookers in just the blink of an eye.
Damn.
Rubens Barrichello, the man racing ahead of him, began struggling to keep his spot in the front. And seemingly, even though he was still in front of Felipe, Rubens' car began slowing down. But this wasn't because of racing skill, it was because Rubens' car was suffering a mechanical failure. In a split second, a suspension spring shot out from Rubens' car, struck Felipe directly in his head at over 160 miles per hour. Even though he was wearing a helmet, the impact force was equivalent to being shot. The spring penetrated through Felipe's helmet visor and hit him above his left eye, instantly fracturing his skull. The man was knocked unconscious while still traveling at top speed. His car continued straight off the racing line, heavily accelerating and heading directly toward a tire barrier. Tragically, the Ferrari slammed into the wall at full racing speed, crushing Felipe inside. He slumped unconscious in the cockpit. Track marshals rushed to extract him, but he wasn't moving. Medical teams airlifted him to a hospital in Budapest, where surgeons performed emergency life-saving efforts on him. Felipe spent over a week in the hospital, but luckily enough, he survived this horrific event. He would go on to miss the remainder of the 2009 season, watching from his hospital bed as his hopes for the championship evaporated.
Damn.
But incredibly enough, he would return to Formula One in 2010, just 8 months after an injury that should have ended his life. The Sleepyhead Incident. Juan Manuel Fangio was already a legend in motorsport, but in 1952, he was pushing himself beyond human limits. Formula One in the early 50s was brutal. Drivers raced nearly every weekend across Europe with minimal rest, while also driving themselves between circuits in regular cars to save money. Fangio hadn't slept in 48 hours. Nonetheless, he had driven overnight from one race to reach Monza for the Italian Grand Prix. Then he immediately participated in practice sessions. His team urged him to rest, but Fangio kept insisting that he was fine. He was a psycho, but he was also one of the greatest drivers who ever lived. A man who would eventually win 5 world championships. So, surely enough, he could handle a little sleep deprivation. The race began, and while shooting down the roads at over 100 miles per hour on Monza's high-speed layout, Fangio's body finally gave out. His exhausted mind told him that he was just blinking, but in reality, he was actually falling asleep behind the wheel, and at those speeds, a moment is enough. His Maserati veered off the racing line. He quickly woke up and tried to correct his position, but his reaction time was dulled by exhaustion. The car left the track at high speeds of about 100 miles per hour. Then it hit a patch of rough ground and went flying airborne. The Maserati somersaulted multiple times, tumbling end over end, like a toy thrown by a child. Fangio, strapped in with minimal safety equipment by modern standards, was thrown violently inside the cockpit with each rotation. When the car finally came to rest upside down, track marshals sprinted over, expecting to find a fatality. But, to everyone's absolute surprise, Fangio was barely alive. He had suffered severe neck injuries, and in a time before modern medicine, doctors warned that he could have easily been paralyzed or utterly destroyed by the impact forces. But Fangio recovered. Not only did he return to racing, but he went on to dominate Formula One throughout the 50s, winning 5 world championships between 1951 and 1957.
Yeah.
And, this man isn't actually really a stranger to surviving impossible situations. Just a year later, he would be kidnapped in Cuba by Fidel Castro's rebels. But surprisingly, he was unscathed. His kidnappers treated him with tons of respect. The crash at Monza that nearly killed him became just another scar in a career defined by legendary resilience and skill. His survival was attributed to both luck and his exceptional physical conditioning, though even Fangio admitted,
bro, these race car niggas I ain't gonna lie, they gotta be making billions of dollars a race to like keep doing this shit after you almost died. Cause there is no way Like, bruh, that shit is I ain't gonna lie, that shit is scary, bro. Like, imagine going top speed in a fucking car and then you just all of a sudden just dark. It's just darkness. Like, bro, that shit, like, yo, they gotta be paying these niggas a fortune to keep doing that shit, bruh.
Afterward that racing without sleep had been an inexcusable mistake that almost cost him everything.
Travel with Expedia, earn 1 key cash, use 1 key
This
cash,
nigga
repeat.
a weak ass car. Like, what the fuck?
Seat incident. On September 1st, in 1990, Martin Donnelly was a rising star in Formula One for the Lotus team. During a practice session ahead of the Spanish Grand Prix, he was pushing his car through the high-speed corners of the racetrack when a suspension failure sent him careening toward a concrete barrier at approximately 170 miles per hour. The impact was catastrophic. The Lotus Lamborghini hit the barrier with such force that the car literally split in two. The cockpit structure separated and the wheels flew off in different directions. But most horrifying of all, Donnelly was ejected from the cockpit while still strapped to his seat. He crashed onto the track surface like a rag doll at speeds over 100 miles. Bystanders froze in absolute disbelief as Donnelly was laying on the asphalt, unconscious, with his legs bent at unnatural angles and pooling around him. Medical crews reached him within seconds, but his injuries were so severe that trackside doctors immediately knew that he wasn't alive. Donnelly was placed in a medically induced coma and airlifted to a hospital in Seville. For days, he remained unconscious while surgeons performed multiple emergency procedures to stabilize his shattered body. To everyone's utter shock, he finally woke. However, doctors delivered devastating news. They stated that Donnelly wouldn't ever walk again because the damage to his legs and pelvis was so extensive that any mobility seemed impossible. But the racer refused to accept that prognosis. Over the next 2 years, he underwent brutal physical therapy and rehabilitation. Slowly and impossibly, he regained the ability to walk, defying every medical expectation. While he never returned to Formula One racing,
respect it though. I ain't gonna
he did
lie,
eventually
bro.
race in other series, and he went on to live a full life. 27 seconds.
Came back.
20 cars came screaming into the first corner of the racetrack at over 100 miles per hour, with drivers left and right jockeying for position. The tension was tight, but the cars were packed even tighter. Each vehicle closely paralleled the other, while waiting for an opportunity to overtake the lead. And then, it happened. Romain Grosjean, starting from the midfield in his VF20, made contact with another car. The touch sent his car skating right across the track directly into the path of the metal barrier at 140 miles per hour. The impact, as usual, was devastating. The force was registered at 67 Gs, which is more than enough to cause fatal injuries. To really put the impact of this collision into perspective, it's like being placed into a medieval catapult and then being shot full force into a wall that's like 10 feet away from you. But the crash itself wasn't the worst part. When Grosjean's car hit the barrier, it didn't crumple in a controlled manner like modern F1 cars are designed to do. Instead, it was flipped over and the barrier penetrated the car's survival cell, essentially spearing through it. The car was split into 2 pieces. The rear section with the engine remained on one side of the barrier, while the front section with Grosjean inside was wedged into the barrier opening. When this happened, the fuel tank ruptured on impact and began spilling fuel across the superheated engine and exhaust components. In just the blink of an eye, the fuel ignited instantly, creating a massive fireball that engulfed what remained of the cockpit. The flames reached over 20 feet high, and temperatures inside the fire exceeded 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit.
Damn.
Although Grosjean miraculously survived the initial collision, he was still trapped. The twisted metal of the barrier was pressing against the car from one side, and the halo device, a titanium ring that sits above the driver's head, was wedged against the barrier on the other side, effectively keeping him tied down. He couldn't move. He couldn't escape. And as the car...
This nigga was stuck in a burning car? Oh my gosh. No, that's actually, yo. Because not only is he stuck and got no way out, bro, the nigga is burning alive, bro. Burning alive was one of the worst deaths in this world, bro. Like, bro, oh my gosh. And then they exploded, so I know there's a little bit of extra damage there, bro. Oh my goodness. That shit burnt them.
Caught on fire, so did he, for 27 seconds.
Oh my
Grosjean would scream in horror while being stuck in a 1,000-degree inferno that consumed every inch of his body. Medical personnel took too long, and the fire was too big. Everybody immediately knew that they just witnessed a man passing away in one of the most shocking ways possible without being able to do anything about it. That is, until a miracle appeared on the scene. A blazing figure emerged from the flames. After being cooked alive for what felt like a lifetime, Grosjean shockingly climbed out of the inferno and ran out into the open with his entire race suit on fire. He later described those 27 petrifying seconds. This is what he said went on from his perspective. I woke up upside down, and at first I tried to get out, but then I couldn't move, so I just decided to wait there for help to come. That is, until I realized my entire car was engulfed in flames. Immediately, I tried to unbuckle my safety harness, but I couldn't find the release mechanism with my gloves. I could feel my hands burning. They were literally on fire, and my race suit was melting into my skin. So I tried a second time to release the buckle, but I failed again. At that point, I just realized that this was my end. This was the way I was going to go out, and so I relaxed in peace with myself and accepted it. And then I thought of my wife and kids. At that point, I wouldn't stop trying until I realized I was outside of the car. Grosjean had suffered severe burns to both hands, particularly his left hand, which showed second and third degree burns. But he was alive, surprisingly with minimal damage. Formula One drivers exist in a unique space where they face potential fatalities at hundreds of miles per hour every time they race. Yet modern safety innovations have made survival increasingly possible even in the most catastrophic accidents. The event organizers, safety engineers, and racers all go through endless sacrifice to keep the passion and tradition of these wonderful sports alive.
That's what I'm talking
Wonderful sports that connect us across the world as a people, regardless of our age, language, heritage, or national affiliation. No matter the climate of positivity or negativity we're in, so long as we as humans can share a passion, we can share our humanity. Stupid, senseless, fun. Be grateful to those who are brave enough to keep passion and humanity thriving by putting on a show for us all, and as always, have a happy day.
That's something I can respect.